I love mysteries. No matter the medium, a mystery is one of the most engaging ways to set up a story or move it forward. Some of my favorite anime, books, and games are all centered around mysteries. What sets games apart from the other mediums, however, is the audience's involvement. Unless you're reading one of those old Goosebumps books, games are the only way where you, the player, have a hand in solving the mystery. There are all sorts of mystery games out there, ranging from social deduction games to horror games, and among this vast genre is a little thing called the court battle mystery game. The genre-defining example is Ace Attorney, where you must defend your clients from false accusations in a comedically biased justice system. It's a great series that balances comedy and drama, and it's produced many successful games since 2001. The other frontrunner, and a bit more infamous, is Danganronpa. Danganronpa is a very popular mystery series in its own right, albeit for very different reasons. It's a series known for its eccentric characters, eccentric plot, eccentric music. Look, the games are weird. A killing game involving high school students moderated by a two-tone teddy bear is a hell of a hook, but it holds onto the audience with its interesting world building and its insane cases. That being said, Danganronpa wears its flaws on its sleeve. Between clunky minigame mechanics, the lackluster gameplay of the visual novel genre, and the many inappropriate jokes that are made in a high school setting, it's no secret that the series is pretty divisive. But what if you take Danganronpa and put a persona mask and a mustache on it? Well, you get Master Detective Archive's Rain Code.
This is the truth!
Rain Code is a court battle detective game that takes heavy inspiration from the Danganronpa series. Okay, that might be an understatement. I'm not joking when I say Rain Code is just a Danganronpa game wearing a mask. It has updated mechanics and doesn't involve a death game, but beyond that, every aspect of this game screams Danganronpa, including the whole wearing its flaws on its sleeve thing. Just like Danganronpa, many of Rain Code's flaws are evident from the start. Unfortunately, its flaws are detrimental to the overall game. Between the simple cases, the god-awful character names, the overwhelmingly static and uninteresting cast, and the general lack of tension, the game just doesn't feel like it tries to engage the player, despite having massive gameplay improvements over its predecessors. That being said, I still love Rain Code, and a large part of why I like it is the game's story and themes. In my opinion, it's a good derivative work. Rain Code uses the story formula that worked well for the Danganronpa games, and purposefully deviates from it to tell a new story. Don't get me wrong, it's not super innovative or mind-blowingly good, but it's a good story nonetheless. So let's look at these similarities and differences and talk about Rain Code's story. Obligatory spoiler warning. There will be heavy spoilers for Rain Code and some pretty heavy spoilers for Danganronpa 1 through 3. Proceed with caution. Let's start with the cliff notes on Rain Code's premise. In Rain Code, we take the role of Yuma Kokohead, an amnesiac detective from the World Detective Organization. The WDO, headed by the mysterious Number 1, is an organization dedicated to solving mysteries and exposing the truth. The WDO employs master detectives, people who have unique supernatural abilities that they use to solve mysteries. These abilities are called fortes. Unlike his fellow detectives, Yuma doesn't have a forte. Instead, he made a deal with a death god, allowing him to physically dive into mysteries by opening up a mystery labyrinth. In these labyrinths, Yuma uses truth keys and his Sword of Truth to beat up mystery phantoms and find the true culprit of each mystery.
Zilch Alexander! It was you!
However, instead of the murderer facing their true self for having a change of heart, Shinigami just kills him. Oh yeah, this chick and this ghost are two different forms of Shinigami, the death god Yuma made the pact with. The thing Yuma sacrificed in this pact was his memory. So all he knows is that he's an apprentice master detective and that he's supposed to help solve the mystery of Kanai Ward. Aside from being able to dive into mystery labyrinths, another ability Yuma seemed to gain was the power to share another person's forte. We first see this when he's talking to a group of master detectives at the start of the game. This group of master detectives is promptly killed by an imposter.
There's an imposter among us.
After our first cast is sacrificed and we solve our first mystery, we get to Kanai Ward and are introduced to the actual cast, the Nocturnal Detective Agency. The agency is dedicated to uncovering all the mysteries of Kanai Ward, an autonomous zone operated by the powerful Amaterasu Corporation. From that point on, the game centers around Yuma, Shinigami, and the detectives of the Nocturnal Detective Agency solving various murder cases and uncovering the truth about Kanai Ward. Each case involves Yuma using people's fortes and bringing them into mystery labyrinths, allowing for a unique experience in each trial.
We're alive, I think.
At this point, the game sounds nothing like Danganronpa, so let's change that. First is the gameplay. Raincode fits very neatly into the genre of court battle mystery games, alongside both Danganronpa and Ace Attorney. It also has the same 3-staged gameplay loop as Danganronpa, with a daily life phase, an investigation phase, and a trial phase. Raincode's daily life equivalent differs significantly from Danganronpa, but the other two phases are near identical in concept. The investigation involves finding evidence in the form of testimonies and material evidence, with the occasional addition of supernatural evidence. This evidence is then used in the trial phase, allowing Yuma to disprove his adversary's theories and uncover the real truth behind each case. The trials consist of both arguments and minigames, and there is often new evidence developed during the trial that becomes the key to determining the culprit. There is even a case recap minigame, although it's called the deduction denouement as opposed to the closing argument. Last but not least, the completion of the trial phase results in the death of the culprit, just like Danganronpa. The reasoning for the extremely similar gameplay isn't just inspiration. Many of the people who worked on the Danganronpa series brought their skills to Raincode, including Rui Komatsuzaki as the character designer, Masafumi Takada as the lead composer, and, of course, Kazutaka Kodaka as the lead writer. Kazutaka Kodaka is the man who started the entire Danganronpa franchise. He's been a writer for every Danganronpa game since the series' conception, and he's the reason I can make this video. We've already talked about gameplay similarities, and most stylistic similarities are evident in the characters and surroundings. The story similarities are much more foundational and are reliant on Kodaka's writing tendencies. A few different aspects of Kodaka's writing are consistent between Danganronpa and Raincode. First, he likes to focus his plots around two simultaneous mysteries. The first is a situational mystery, the whodunit trial that takes place in each chapter. The second type is the overarching mystery, which consistently propels the cast through the plot. In Danganronpa, it's who's the mastermind. In Raincode, it's what is the secret of Kanai Ward. The two mysteries usually play off of one another, with the situational mystery advancing the overarching mystery, or, more interesting, the overarching mystery advancing the situational mystery. Second, Kodaka uses a very gradual snowballing pace in the story, where progress in solving the overarching mystery is effectively stonewalled until the latter half of the story. The third similarity is much more basic. Each game is divided into 6 cases. This results in familiar pacing, although we don't have to worry about the dreaded Case 3 double kill. At least, not entirely. Looking at these 3 trends, it's a bit easier to see the story similarities between the games. Now, let's start to look at the differences between them, starting with the way each game is set up. The first difference in setup is the tone of the story. Raincode's vibe is very different from Danganronpa. Danganronpa is tense, dreadful, and chaotic. The students all feel threatened by one another, they're constantly being watched, and the passage of time is unavoidable and guarantees conflict. The larger goal of figuring out the mastermind's identity and escaping the killing game is forced onto the back burner by the murders that take place throughout it. The soundtrack complements this, with most of the daily life songs being off-putting or feeling melancholy. This is occasionally juxtaposed by an upbeat song here or that one weird Monokuma song there, but it's always just a matter of time until the melancholy returns. Or worse, the more active songs start to play as a case needs to be solved. By comparison, Raincode isn't tense. The objective of the story is to learn the truth about Kanai Ward, and each case Yuma solves is meant to get him closer to learning that truth. Time is still important, but the passage of time doesn't guarantee tragedy like it does in Danganronpa. This is reflected by the soundtrack being much more mysterious and often much more atmospheric. There are still melancholy and action-packed tracks, but they are far more situational. And of course, the intensity is still ramped up toward the end of the game. That's to be expected with any mystery game. Now, let's go back to the pacing of the story. Kodaka's pacing hinges on the cast struggling to make progress in the mystery. In Danganronpa, this relationship is easily maintained in 2 ways. First is the cast's level of competence. Even if they're skilled at some things, they're ultimately just high schoolers scared for their lives. They just aren't equipped to solve these mysteries. The few competent characters either isolate themselves from the rest of the cast or wind up dead.
What the heck?
Meaning that progress in the main plot only starts to pick up once the group trusts each other and builds up their competence. The second way he maintains it is through the cases. The need to solve a murder gets in the way of escaping the game. Now replace those high schoolers with magic users who are supposed to be competent detectives. To maintain the snowballing pace that Kodaka uses, the first step is to shrink the cast. Instead of 16 students, we get 6 detectives. And I said supposed to be competent for a reason. And that's because master detectives are fucking stupid.
What comes after 3?
5 master detectives couldn't suss out one imposter, and the only thing the imposter had working in his favor was that his forte couldn't be used on the train. Now, unfortunately, even the Nocturnal Detective Agency isn't immune from this, as the only truly competent detectives are Vivia, Halara, and Chief Yako. Desuhiko's ability is limited to social engineering, which is pretty hard to do here, and Fubuki is, well...
Chief, you look so clean cut today. You look just like Halara.
Aside from the cast size, the nature of the antagonist is also very different. Instead of having a single psychopathic game master, the mystery of Kanai Ward is buried underneath layer after layer of corruption and corporate subterfuge. Amaterasu Corporation controls every aspect of Kanai Ward and employs an authoritarian security force called the Peacekeepers. They are dedicated to preventing the detectives from solving anything in the city, and it takes a long time for the NDA to weaken the Peacekeepers' hold on Kanai Ward. To summarize these differences, Rain Code uses a calmer tone, a smaller cast, and a more complex threat to set up its story. Now, let's look at what it achieves with those differences. The first obvious difference is the relationship that the audience holds with the cast. Since the entire cast is at risk of being murdered in Danganronpa, there is always some level of skepticism that comes with learning about them. The audience adopts a who's next mindset that helps keep the story tense, but it becomes hard to latch on to any specific character. The tutorial case of Rain Code sets a similarly ominous precedent, but it's quickly washed away by the preceding cases. This allows the audience to grow much closer to the main cast, and as we'll see in a few minutes, Kodaka takes advantage of this. The second difference is the story being told. The theme of Danganronpa is pretty well known as being hope versus despair. Moving away from the terms used in the game, Danganronpa is about having the will to persevere when faced with uncertainty. The conclusion the game reaches is that moving forward is necessary, even if it takes suffering to do so. It's a surprisingly uplifting conclusion given the events and overall tone of the game. On the flip side, Rain Code's theme is a bit more specific of a topic, being, is exposing the truth always the right thing to do? And the game is pretty ruthless with this theme.
I should let so many people die for the truth?
The first 2 cases are cut and dry, black and white cases. The culprits are cold-hearted killers who knew what they were doing and deserved their fate.
You're the copycat criminal!
The third case is where it starts to get messy. The third case involves the theater club of the all-girls high school in Kanai Ward. Yuma goes to investigate a recent murder at the request of Wendy, a student who wants to become a detective. While Yuma's investigating the original murder, he's actually witness to another murder, which is what the third mystery labyrinth is built off of. He uses Desuhiko's disguise ability to investigate and solve the murder, and it turns out that the victim of the new murder was a cold-blooded killer herself. It was a revenge killing. The Peacekeepers ruled the case a suicide, so the killer was never going to see justice. So, 3 friends of the original victim took matters into their own hands, and they all had a part in the murderer's death. Going by the rules of the Mystery Labyrinth, all 3 of these girls are murderers. When the Mystery Labyrinth is completed, they will all drop dead of mysterious circumstances. The Mystery Labyrinth is closed, and the girls die. This case is the first introduction to our theme. Unlike the first 2 cases, Yuma didn't save any lives by solving the labyrinth. The girls weren't going to kill anybody else, and the victim was the culprit Yuma initially intended to discover. Despite that, once the Mystery Labyrinth is started, Yuma has no choice but to see it through to the end. If he fails to do so, Desuhiko, Shinigami, and Yuma will all die in the Mystery Labyrinth. By solving the mystery, Yuma is ultimately responsible for the deaths of those 3 girls. Yuma isn't thrilled about this result. Until this point, he was operating under the idea that detectives are heroes. Yuma thinks that his past self wanted to become a detective to save other people. But the outcome of this case seems to go against that. Yuma did save Wendy from wrongful imprisonment, but he had to kill 3 people in the process. In response to this, Shinigami tries to change Yuma's perspective on what a detective does. She says that a detective's job isn't to be a hero or to save people, it's to expose the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. As long as Yuma exposes the truth, he's doing the right thing. Yuma has mixed feelings about this idea, but it motivates him enough to continue investigating Kanai Ward. As the story continues, we get introduced to Makoto. Not that Makoto, or that Makoto, but instead Makoto Kagutsuchi, the CEO of Amaterasu Corporation. We'll talk more about him later. Then the 4th case comes and goes. It's an interesting heist plot, but it's a pretty straightforward case of betrayal and murder. At the same time, some more large-scale plot development happens. First, we learn that the research of Amaterasu Corp is rumored to involve creating immortal homunculi. Second, we see that Makoto and the Peacekeepers don't see eye to eye.
The Peacekeepers are always watching you.
Which seems to indicate that the Peacekeepers aren't as strong as we once thought. This revelation is where the 5th case starts, and it holds the 2nd iteration of our theme. It's also where Kodaka takes advantage of our relationship with the cast. We start with the entirety of the Nocturnal Detective Agency finding themselves in Amaterasu's secret research laboratory, located directly under the corporation's headquarters. In this lab is Dr. Wesker.
7 minutes.
Sorry, I meant Dr. Huesca. We don't get to know Dr. Huesca very long, as somebody is trying to kill him. Yuma and the other detectives try to protect the doctor, but he's murdered before they can get to him. Chaos ensues, and we quickly get a second victim, Chief Yako. He gets stabbed by a hitman and is on death's door.
Teetering on the brink.
The detectives try to keep Yako alive while also running from the Peacekeepers. While all of this is going on, Yuma and Vivia investigate the 2 murders by using Vivia's spectral projection forte. But while they're investigating, Vivia insists that Yuma doesn't need to find the truth for this case, even threatening Yuma's life over it.
They'll slice your throat open.
Yuma ignores the pleas and the threats, though, and the duo end up heading into the Mystery Labyrinth. Progress through the Mystery Labyrinth starts well, but it becomes roadblocked by a single question. Who killed Dr. Huesca? The incredibly tight security in the lab rules out suspect after suspect, but Yuma just can't connect the dots. This causes Vivia to confront Yuma again. Yuma isn't solving the Mystery Labyrinth because Yuma doesn't want to accept the truth. The culprit of Dr. Huesca's murder has to be at death's door due to inhaling a poison gas, and there's only one person in the entire lab who is at death's door.
Chief. Yako.
According to Vivia, Chief Yako planned almost everything that happened during the case. It was all an elaborately planned murder, including Yako being attacked by an assassin. He took advantage of the Nocturnal Detective Agency's skills to pull it off, and he almost made a perfect crime. What was the motive for doing this? Revenge. Yako's wife had been murdered by Dr. Huesca over a whistleblower incident. Yako was given proof of this from an anonymous source, and he used it to take revenge. Once Yuma realizes that Yako is the culprit, he's a mess.
Why did you do it?
On one hand, there's a sense of betrayal. Yako's murder plan was accomplished using the detective's efforts to save Dr. Huesca. On the other hand, Yuma is confronted by his responsibility as a detective. He now has to uncover Yako's crimes and reap his soul. The Nocturnal Detective Agency, the only friends that Yuma currently has, will lose its leader as Chief Yako's fate is sealed and the truth is unraveled. On top of the emotions that Yuma is feeling, Yako's motivations directly combat our main theme. When Yako learned the truth about his wife, he decided to sacrifice himself for the sake of revenge. This does make sense for his character. He's a beaten down detective who's been forced to watch as injustice took over his home, Kanai Ward. And he finally has enough of it and decides to take matters into his own hands. But, regardless of the justification, the truth ultimately led to the deaths of 2 people, again showcasing the potential cost of revealing the truth.
The culprit who murdered Dr. Huesca, and even included his own death in the plot.
Yako Furio! It was you!
As I mentioned earlier, this dilemma is our second iteration of the theme. The first iteration had Yuma recontextualize what his job was as a detective. The second iteration forces him to put his money where his mouth is. And, although he believed he was ready to expose the truth at all costs, his subconscious refused to do so. This case, and particularly Vivia's confrontational attitude towards Yuma, allows Yuma to address his cognitive dissonance and confront his mixed feelings.
Why did it have to end this way? Why didn't you tell us?
Yuma clears the mystery labyrinth, Yako's soul is reaped by Shinigami, and the detectives are returned to the real world. On the bright side, Makoto Kagutsuchi regains control of the Peacekeepers and imprisons Director Yomi, effectively neutralizing our main antagonist. Feelings are mixed for the detectives, but they don't get much time to process them before getting drugged and abducted, kicking off our final chapter. And, of course, our ultimate iteration of the main theme. The final chapter starts by dropping the facade and becoming an obvious homage to Resident Evil. Yuma and Wendy wake up in a zombie village, and we see many of our past victims and perpetrators turn into zombies. We're lured into a processing plant by a mysterious voice, and, one by one, we encounter the remains of our fellow detectives.
These clothes belong to Tetsuhiko.
And for each detective we find, we also find a letter written by them. From these letters, we learn about the true mystery of Kanai Ward piece by piece. First, the unified government, basically the main world government, paid Amaterasu Corp to research homunculi. Homunculi are created by taking the DNA of a person and incubating it, creating a perfect clone of the original. The resulting homunculus is functionally immortal, having all injuries healed after dying. The homunculus even holds the same memories as its host at the moment of DNA collection. There is only one sure way to distinguish homunculi from humans.
Blood. Homunculi have special characteristics to their blood.
The homunculus research started about 10 years ago. After about 7 years, a rival lab successfully created a homunculus of its own. Feeling the pressure, Amaterasu took desperate measures. They drew blood samples from almost every resident in Kanai Ward, hoping to achieve success by sheer volume. Right around this time, a thing called the Blank Week Mystery happens. As the name suggests, every single resident of Kanai Ward is missing exactly 1 week's worth of memories.
I woke up one day and the entire city was ruined. Something terrible must have happened while we were sleeping. But none of the residents remember a thing.
Right after this happened, Kanai Ward became completely isolated from the rest of the world. Unfortunately for Kanai Ward, the homunculus experiments failed. The homunculi have several flaws. The first flaw is their food source. Homunculi require human flesh to operate, making them naturally drawn to eating humans. Second, their bodies are immortal, but their minds aren't. They effectively become zombies after death. Third, exposure to sunlight makes a homunculus go berserk. They basically become feral ghouls, hunting down the nearest human and ripping them to shreds. The Amaterasu researchers discovered all of this during their testing 3 years ago. Starting to see the pieces come together? 3 years ago, Amaterasu began mass-producing homunculi using the DNA of Kanai Ward's residents. These homunculi were exposed to sunlight, turning them into a flood of flesh-seeking missiles. The rabid homunculi descended upon the rest of Kanai Ward, killing and completely devouring every single resident. After a week, it started raining all throughout the city, and all of the homunculi resumed their lives as the new residents of Kanai Ward. And now, the only way to tell that everybody in the town is replaced is their pink blood. Kanai Ward's residents are all homunculi. Given that they need human flesh to function, the entire city has been attached to a massive human trafficking ring. Thousands of death row inmates from around the world have been kidnapped and turned into fucking meat buns for Kanai Ward to dine on. The rain that constantly blankets the city is completely artificial, coming from this big machine right at the top of the city. And the man behind it all is Makoto Kagutsuchi. Shocking, I know. We enter the final mystery labyrinth with all of these pieces laid out in front of us. No companion this time, just one last dance with Shinigami. The labyrinth starts out normal as we work through the information revealed to us throughout the investigation.
Right here!
And as things develop, we realize that the one man who ties everything together, the rain, the missing people, and the transformation of Amaterasu Corp, is Makoto.
You sure took a while getting here. Maybe I shouldn't expect much of you.
At this point, the dynamic of the labyrinth completely changes. It's unlike any other case that we've seen, and that's important. As Makoto is named the culprit behind everything, he becomes our target mystery phantom. Except that Makoto has the same sort of truth that we do, and our fight with him is completely unique. It's insane. Look at the stuff that we're doing in this fight.
You isolated all of Kanai Ward!
But I don't just mean boss fight unique. The mechanics that we usually use to fight mystery phantoms have been all but abandoned. Basically, Makoto isn't acting like a mystery phantom at all. So what if he's just not a mystery phantom? The core mystery for the second half of this labyrinth is Makoto's true identity. First off, Makoto has insane intellect. He orchestrated every major event in the game, including the NDA taking down Yomi. It's not Aizen levels of planning, but it's up there. Second, he has a very strange sympathy for the homunculi of Kanai Ward.
All of this was to protect them.
And third, well, I already mentioned it. He's not a mystery phantom. I mean, look, he's bleeding right there. Phantoms don't bleed. Wait. Ignore that for a second. Throughout the game, we've seen people follow Yuma into the mystery labyrinth by using coalescence. But if Makoto followed them into the labyrinth, and Yuma didn't activate coalescence, then there's only one possibility. Makoto used coalescence. Makoto has coalescence. Makoto is a homunculi based on Yuma's DNA. Coalescence isn't an ability granted to Yuma by Shinigami. It's Yuma's own forte, and Yuma is a bona fide master detective. But if that's the case, then who the hell is Yuma? Well,
Therefore, you must be the homunculus of number 1 Makoto Kagutsuchi!
Yuma is number 1 of the WDO. He is the top master detective. Of course, Yuma Kokohead isn't his real name. It's a borrowed identity for the purposes of his mission. With that reveal, all of Kanai Ward's mysteries are solved, and we're left with our final iteration of our theme, the ultimatum. Does Yuma expose the truth of Kanai Ward and kill Makoto, or does he stay in the mystery labyrinth and let the truth die with him?
What is your solution?
At first, Yuma thinks the correct answer is to not expose the truth at all, just leave things as they are. The residents of Kanai Ward haven't done anything wrong, Makoto is just trying to protect them, and the sheer scale of the consequences are incomparable to the rest of our cases. Exposing the truth will have global ramifications here. So is exposing the truth really the right choice? Well, of course, Shinigami thinks it is.
That doesn't matter! We're in the middle of solving this mystery labyrinth!
And we learn why her conviction is so strong. This was the wish of number 1. Number 1 sacrificed everything he had for the power of Shinigami, and it was expressly to expose the truth of Kanai Ward. After finally knowing the truth, it needs to be revealed. So, Yuma is forced to think of his core motivation. He wants to expose the truth and make everyone happy. Number 1 believed it was possible, but how can Yuma achieve that perfect solution? He isn't number 1 anymore, he's just some trainee detective. It seems like an impossible task for Yuma to accomplish on his own. Ironically, we see the same exact conflicts plaguing Makoto. Makoto shares Yuma's core motivation and tried to achieve a perfect solution by himself, but with each step he took toward protecting Kanai Ward, he grew further away from achieving that perfect solution.
The mysteries have consumed me.
Now, he has no choice but to entrust that Yuma makes the right decision. So, Yuma concocts his perfect plan. He'll let Makoto escape the mystery labyrinth, sacrificing himself in the process. Makoto will return to Kanai Ward and expose the truth to everyone. After that, Makoto can continue to act as the protector of Kanai Ward, but the people will learn the truth and get to decide their own fate. Ultimately, Yuma's solution is to let others find their own solution.
It's not my solution, it's everyone's.
This choice is what makes Yuma different from Makoto. Makoto tried to save Kanai Ward by himself. He didn't ask for help, and he ended up creating an imperfect solution in the process. Number 1 likely suffered from the same issue, which is why he decided that signing a deal with Shinigami was the right choice. To reach the perfect solution, Yuma needed to rely on other people, because for a mystery as big as Kanai Ward, it is simply impossible to tackle it alone. And all throughout the game, we watch Yuma rely on his fellow master detectives. Hell, his forte is purpose-built to rely on the people around him. This was the simple truth that Number 1 failed to see. Or maybe it was the exact solution Number 1 could see.
Let's just say I'm dealing with some special circumstances, and I need your help.
So, Makoto cancels his coalescence ability and exits the Mystery Labyrinth. Once Makoto exposes the truth, the labyrinth will collapse, killing Yuma and Shinigami. But Shinigami proposes a deal. Her and Yuma can cancel the pact and create an emergency exit. Yuma gets to escape into the real world and regain his memories. But once the pact is invalid, Yuma will have no recollection of Shinigami or the Mystery Labyrinths. And once Yuma leaves, the Mystery Labyrinth will still collapse around Shinigami. Her fate would be unknown. She might die or cease to exist, or she might return to the Book of Death. But at least Yuma could live. So, in a heartfelt goodbye, Yuma cancels his pact with Shinigami and exits the Mystery Labyrinth.
Bye-bye, Master.
Thank you, Shinigami.
At last, the mystery of Kanai Ward is solved. The epilogue is played from the view of Kurumi, and we can see that the residents of Kanai Ward are doing well. Kanai Ward's isolation has ended, although the rain still protects them. Thanks to the work of the real Yuma Kokohead, a trainee detective with a passion for cooking, the homunculi gain a new, non-human-based food source, ramen. Also, the Nocturnal Detective Agency is still alive. Makoto faked their deaths, likely to antagonize Yuma into confronting him. Lastly, Yuma, formerly number 1 of the WDO, leaves the organization, traveling the globe and solving mysteries as a freelance detective. And, as the credits roll, Kurumi sets out to find him, holding the same Book of Death that Shinigami was contained in. Lower the curtains, the story is finally over. This ending is the perfect capstone to the story. The final answer to our central theme is that exposing the truth is always the right thing to do. Sometimes the truth is too much for one person to handle, but that's not a reason to keep the truth hidden, it's a reason to cooperate with others. And throughout the game, that is the exact thing we're taught to do. We rely on Halara, Desuhiko, Fubuki, and Vivia to solve various mysteries. From beginning
I'm putting my trust in you.
to end,
I'm putting my trust in you, Master.
we rely on Shinigami to expose the truth when it would be impossible by ourselves. So, when the stakes are at their highest, why would we do anything else? It's a perfect solution brought about by a perfect deduction, and it gives us, in my opinion, a perfect ending. Thanks for watching.